Good afternoon. I'd like to just clarify one thing. If you know of treasure outside of New England, I'm not necessarily against that too. It's just, this stuff's closer. So, my name's Dave Ramsden, and this is a picture of me in the 70s. Now, it may be a little hard to see. This is a real old picture, not something we did with Instagram. But I can personally vouch for the fact that that is me sitting on the sawhorse wearing a Fonzie t-shirt. How many folks out there remember Fonzie? Just out of curiosity. All right. Beautiful. And what was Fonzie? Correctamundo. All right. So, as hard as this may be for you to believe, I was not cool. Thank you for that laughter. I was that kid who played Dungeons and Dragons. And not only that, I was introverted. I was shy. I walked, with a little bit of a slouch so I wouldn't stick out. Well, later in life, I found out I had Asperger syndrome. And that explained a lot of that to me. But back in the day, all I knew was that I had really, really weak social skills. And that as long as I was around that Dungeons and Dragons table, rolling those funky-looking dice, it didn't really come into play. But in time, my priorities changed. My friends at that table started disappearing. They seemed to be hearing the call of the damsel. And at a certain point, my priorities started to change too. And I started to develop this dream of romance, this vision of love. Well, I knew I had to find a strategy to overcome my social hurdles because I couldn't even talk to a girl for 2 minutes, let alone just socialize or stand in front of a group of 600 people on a stage or anything like that. That was just crazy. But my neurological wiring was working against me. So I had to look in my bag of tricks to see what I had, what I could leverage to try and increase my odds. Well, I looked in there, and there wasn't a hell of a lot. But I found analytics, and I said, yes, all the great lovers were great analysts. Dan Pink will tell you. Well, I decided to do some analysis. I did a scientific study of different groups of men to see how I could improve my odds. And what I found right off the bat was that dungeon masters had about a 3% chance of finding a date. Well, I looked a little further, and as I suspected, athletes had a much better shot, 63%. And that was more like what I was hoping for. But in my research, I found there was this third group, this very compelling group. Rock stars had a 200% chance. And you may think I'm exaggerating, to try and make a point, but they were out with 2 girls at any one point in time, so there's no arguing with the facts. Well, it was clear what I had to do, so I decided to become a rock star. Bought a guitar. I practiced it till I got all those little calluses on the tips of my fingers. My parents complained about the noise, and I played on. My friends came over and asked me to go out to parties, but I was determined to become a more social person, so I stayed in my room, and I played on. Well, in time, I joined a group of guys. We actually formed a band. We got some gigs and got a following. And just as I planned it, a very beautiful, very wonderful girl asked me out. Well, felt like I was nearing the realization of my dream, my vision. And at the end of the night, I took her hand and I walked her from the car up to her front porch. It was a long walk. It was like way over there. When I got up to the stairs, she turned around and she looked in my eyes. Have any of you ever kissed someone? No, really, like show of hands. Wow. After this event in the rotunda, there will be a mixer. Well, I hadn't either. Every muscle in my face went numb. My lips froze. Not even a pucker. Well, as you can imagine, I think she was a little disappointed that night. And I was a little bit downtrodden as I drove home. I laugh at it now looking back on it. But the fact of the matter was, I had forgotten about the outcome. I didn't set out to be a rock star. I set out to find romance. I had never done anything to learn anything about romance. Not that it came naturally. Well, I see this all the time in life. I see this in all of you sometimes. We get so focused on the task at hand that we take our eyes off the outcome. I've seen good people, project managers, so intent on finishing a project that they never bother to see if it accomplished its goals. It's not incompetence, it's human nature. We focus more narrowly so that we can execute more efficiently, and in time, somehow, we get off track. Perspective is everything. And we're going to need to be able to maintain that perspective, both when we set our vision for the future and when we execute upon it. And we need to set a new vision for the future because just like my world was changing back in the 70s and the 80s, the world of IT is changing just as dramatically today. Cloud services, mobile, social, big data analytics. The nexus of forces marks a new stage in the industry's evolution that is dramatically revolutionizing everything we do, both in our personal consumption of technology and the business platforms we operate on. This state of disruption brings both risk and opportunity. Gartner says that CIOs must evolve or risk becoming irrelevant. And even the term CIO, traditionally we think of a chief information officer, but there are so many other aspects of the job that are gaining in prominence, from infrastructure to intelligence to integration and innovation. There are many aspects that we can choose to focus on as we create our vision. Only you know where your vision is. Only you know what your passion is. It's the intrinsic motivation that Dan Pink spoke about. That's what's going to give us the energy to actually be able to create something different. It doesn't take much energy to keep doing what we're doing. As we try to create something different, we're going to run into hurdles. And when we run into hurdles, we do one of two things. We either stop and use it as an excuse, or we see that hurdle as an opportunity to distinguish ourselves. I, for one, happen to fail a lot, but I would rather fail trying to distinguish myself than to succeed in doing nothing. The other thing that we have to do is stop looking at ourselves so much and look out at our organization. We work within the context of that organization, and understanding our organization is critical. What are our organization's goals? Our success should be measured in terms of our organization's success. Now, it may be, for many of us in this room, that we measure our success in terms of profit. But for other organizations, it could be graduation rate, or it could be the number of lives saved. We need to start with that understanding. And then we need to go one step further because two organizations may chase the same goal in vastly different ways. Look at your organization, your company, your school, your hospital, and ask yourself, Are we looking to be high value, or are we looking to be high volume? If your organization is focused on being high value, you're looking to differentiate yourselves. And the projects, the IT projects that a high value organization embark upon are going to be very different. They may be focused on growth, on transformation, on innovation. On the other hand, the IT projects that a high volume organization chases are going to be more focused on things like cost reduction, process efficiency, infrastructure reliability. They're both important. They both add huge value to the organization that they're a part of, but in different ways. Research shows that CIOs are gaining strategic influence within their organizations. The number of CIOs who are reporting directly to the CEO is increasing and is expected to dramatically over the next 4 years. But it's not increasing at the same rate in every organization. So a key part of you gaining strategic influence is going to be understanding how you can take your intrinsic motivation and align it with the needs and the values of your organization. Now, there's a third thing that we need to do that will increase our strategic influence, and that is to focus on outcomes. Because vision without execution is really just a daydream. I'd like to share one more story, this time of how we had a vision at Atrion for what we might be able to do with IT to focus more on intelligence. Now, when we did this, we were big fans of business intelligence. But we wanted to do something that went a step further than that, because business intelligence is an incredibly valuable tool, but it's not an outcome. We wanted to actually be able to implement a life cycle of intelligence services that took a step back, started by looking at the needs of the organization, then pulled together the information that we needed, and used human analysis to convert that into intelligence. Then, we'd collaborate with the executive teams to form strategy and actually gauge our ability to execute on that strategy and to make sure that the outcomes we reached at the end were in line with the needs that we set out to fill. Well, we didn't really have permission to do this, but we understood our organization. We understood the things we valued. We wanted to be a differentiator. We had a big focus on relationships and also on providing an incredible client experience. Knowing that, we decided to see if there was some way we could contribute that we hadn't before. Now, at this point in time, it was around the year 2010. This is a graph of our sales performance for the years leading up to that. And you can see that it follows a similar pattern, kind of the Atrion roller coaster there. The blue line there shows performance in 2010. And you can see that there really weren't any major changes going on. We were growing. If you totaled the figures for each year, we were growing, and it was a regular rate we were growing at. But it was somewhat static, and it wasn't meeting our growth goals. Well, we decided to start doing some analysis, and we looked at our clients, many of the folks in this room. We found that we had about 500 clients at the time, and interestingly, we did more than 80% of our business with less than 20% of those clients. Well, we looked at that group of 20%, and we said, what makes them so ideal? So we started to look for patterns. Same way I looked at patterns before when I was trying to find a date. We looked at different things, and we found some similar traits in things like the industries that we served, in the geography, the location of these clients, in their size, both in terms of revenues and maybe the number of end users they supported. And we saw some patterns emerging there that kind of gave us an idea of who the ideal client looked like for us. But at the same time, we said, we're not looking at the other 80%. What's going on there? Well, when we looked at there, we saw a number of things going on. But the most striking thing we saw there was that in most of those clients' cases, we didn't understand their business. We had no relationship with those clients. In fact, the business that we did was very transactional with them. It was more of a one-night stand than a relationship. Now, it's the type of business that many of our competitors chase, and with good reason. They have monthly numbers to meet, and when you have monthly numbers to meet, you pull in what you need to do that. And to be honest, we did some of that as well. That's why we had this 80% there. But it was teaching us something as we went through this analysis. We said, if relationships have an effect on the 80%, what is it doing on the 20%? So we dug a little deeper. We wound up creating kind of a magic quadrant. And what we found was, whether a client was a standard business to do business with, or whether it fit a certain ideal profile, certainly had some level of effect on the amount of business they might do with us. But when you combine that with the relationship, and you were able to move that relationship from a transactional to a strategic relationship, where we understood the client, what their needs were, how they measured success, you saw the results of our efforts increase 8-fold. Now, that was really compelling. I mean, even to us, we were sitting in the IT room getting all compelled. And we double-checked some things. We found supportive evidence. We actually found that in all of our salespeople, the more clients they supported, the less business they brought in. Opportunity chasing led to a demonstration of the law of diminishing returns. Well, we walked into the boardroom, and we met with executive leadership, and we said, hey, we think we have a plan that could double sales. And they kind of raised their eyebrows. Why? Because we were IT. But we have a good team, and leadership embraced the idea. You see, all of this really only served to validate what we felt from the very beginning, that making a positive impact, understanding our clients, all of that works together to create a better experience for everybody. Well, we use this knowledge to make better strategic decisions. As we move forward, we made decisions to pursue clients, not opportunities. We also decided that we needed to take time to understand which clients appreciated the value that we added. And finally, we needed to invest our time wisely. Focus on those clients and build strong relationships with them. Now, this all led in the end to outcomes. So I'd like to share some of those with you. In the months that followed, our close ratios began to improve. The days to close actually grew shorter. We found that if relationships suffered, our business suffered by an average of 35%. And on the other hand, if relationships improved, business improved every single time, and not by 35%, by 600%. Over the next 6 months, we saw the performance start to increase outside of the old patterns that we had seen. In the year ahead, we built momentum, we improved our focus, and we saw it continue to increase. And over these next several years, we actually saw our revenues double. Now, transforming IT into an intelligence organization did not double the size of our business. That took a lot of work from a lot of people, and there were many other real variables at play. But we did contribute. We were no longer a cost center. And it dramatically enhanced our role in the organization and the strategic influence that we had. We were starting to redefine what we could do. 4 years later, that original vision has really come into fruition at this point. with a separate function devoted solely to strategy, from business intelligence to market intelligence, strategy development, and execution. And the company continues to grow and continues to reap the benefits of that decision support. Now, for takeaways, we know that disruption abounds in the technology marketplace today, as well as it does in many of our own separate industries. The business needs more from us. The role of the CIO and of IT in general needs to evolve. It needs to change. If we want to create a compelling and attaining vision and set a course for our future in doing that, we need to do three things. We need to leverage our passion, the intrinsic motivation that Daniel Pink spoke about. We need to understand our organization and its goals, and we need to make sure that our passion and our organization are in line with one another. And most of all, we need to stay focused on the business outcomes. The past creates us and it sets us on our way, but we can't live there. We tend to fail when we're outside of our comfort zones, just like me with that first kiss. But if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. Those of us who keep our eye on the outcome, we never give up. And as a case in point, despite that rocky start, Laura and I worked on that kiss. 23 years and 4 kids later, she says it's improving. Thank you all very much.